Hello, hello, hello. Well, the time has ticked on past. We are at 7:07, a nice palindromic time. It's a good time to start, I feel like, especially since I think this is Pyninsula number 7. Number 6? It's the 7th one, but it's number 6 because we do 0 index, but we skipped 1 too, so this is the 6th one. Okay. All right. So, yes, now that I have your attention, welcome to Pyninsula number 6. And, here at wonderful Quora, I'm your host, Mahmoud Hashemi. And, you also may not know, this is Mark Williams. He's an organizer as well.
I am.
And he's going to be our Moshe of the night because Moshe is at home with his wife who is recovering from surgery ahead of schedule. So everything is really good. He will be back next month with all sorts of great stories, including ones of Pi Bay. Did anyone here go to Pi Bay? This guy went. I saw his talk. It was really good. Lukash, I saw you on the panel. It was really nice. Vijay, you had a good time? He had a good time. I think everyone had a good time. I had a very good time. Maybe during the lightning talks, if nobody gets up and talks, I'll tell you more about it. But it was really good, and I'm looking forward to 2018. So basically, let's see. What is the agenda of the night?
So we're going to have some talks. How many people are here for the first time?
Oh, that's a good question. That's a lot.
Yeah,
because if you've noticed, like we're Pyninsula. We're supposed to be in the peninsula. I would consider this the southern border of the peninsula. How many people are here from Quora? Okay, a few. How many people are new because we came further south? A couple, a few. All right.
See?
Okay.
I'm going to go there.
Yeah. Go to that one so I can say what the talks are. All right.
So this also will give you like an overview of how we do things. Talks are very short. So 15-minute talks, we do 3. And then we have a break between each of the talks for people to come up and talk about things. So if you're recruiting and you want to talk about all the great positions you're hiring for, come on up and talk about that between the talks. If you would like a job and you're interested in being hired by one of those recruiters or want to have a conversation about that, come up between the talks and talk about that.
Actually, I'll just go ahead and since we're jumping the gun here and talking about the intermissions, I had an idea for one, especially relevant since we're here at Quora. If you have a question that's kind of like open-ended, right? You should come up and ask that, right?
That's a good idea.
Like we have people here from Instagram, we have people here from, Quora, we have people here from all sorts of startups. If you're curious, if you're here from out of town and you're curious about how something works, come ask that and we'll get a little discussion going for just a couple minutes. I think that would be a fun experiment here at Quora, Quora.com, your source for all the questions and answers, trademarked. I think that's the slogan, right? Okay. Yeah, so first up, we have Jelle Zylstra. Hopefully I'm saying that right. And he's going to be talking to us about batching requests using asynchronous programming. Jelle is an engineer here at Quora, and he is our first speaker, and his slides are somewhere back here. He'll find them. Excellent. Well, everyone, give a round of applause for Jelle.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Quora. I'm Jelle. I'm a software engineer here working on infrastructure. I want to share a little bit about the way we do asynchronous programming and batching at Quora. So this doesn't work. So to start with, some background on the way we set up our web stack. When you look at Quora, you'll often see things like this. This guy you might have seen at the entrance, he's a manager, and he has a Quora profile. So when we render his Quora profile, we need to figure out what his name is. We need to figure out what his long and short bios are. We need to figure out how many people are following him, a bunch of other things. So these are some of the things you have to look up. And in code, that's going to look something like this, where we render his name, we render his profile photo, and all that. And within each of these functions, you need to go to Memcache. Memcache is our caching server. We get all of our data from there. So naively, you would implement a function something like this. You get his username, then you put it in a B tag. Of course, this is not our actual implementation, because then we would have an XSS hole, and we don't have access assholes at Quora. But yeah, the most important part here now is the mc.get. Because what's going to happen with an implementation like this is you call render name, you make a request to memcache, you call render photo, you make another request to memcache, etc. So the communication between your web server and your cache server looks something like this. You get a username, you get a response back, and so on 5 more times. But that's really inefficient. What we want to do instead is make it so that we can do all these things at once, because memcache supports something called a multi-get, where you request multiple keys at once and get all of them in a single request. If you look something like this, where you do all of these things concurrently, do all of these memcache requests concurrently, and then you have only a single request to memcache, which will be a lot faster than those 5 different requests we had before. So how do we do this in our Python code? I showed you before, this is what our code would look like without our batching abstraction. With batching, it looks something like this. We have a special decorator that turns our functions into special async functions. And instead of calling memcache directly, we create a special kind of future object. We yield it, and the scheduler abstraction takes care of going to memcache and getting the data. A very simple scheduler would look something like this. You call the generator, you manually get the thing it yields, you get it from memcache, you send it back into the generator. This implementation doesn't really do anything useful yet because it still does a single get. What we actually support is useful for things like this, where we have these 5 different things we get from memcache. Here, what we can do is a single yield. Instead of yielding, getting all of these things from memcache separately, we yield 5 of these functions at once. And the scheduler in the async framework will take care of executing them all concurrently and batching all the requests to memcache. And then again, you get this sort of execution where all of these render functions start executing. They all need to get some data from memcache. They all get data from memcache, they get it back, and they continue executing. So next, I want to discuss a couple of questions you may have about async and design considerations we had while designing the framework. First, for us, it was very important to get a good path for migrating towards using this, because we started with a big code base that didn't have async yet. And we need to gradually introduce it because it was way too much to change all at once. So we designed it in such a way that you can easily make a single function async and not worry about changing too much other code. The main way we implement that is that when you do something like yield f.async to call another asynchronous function, you can actually also just call f directly, and it will just execute the function, do any batching it can do within the function, and give you the result back. So from the point of view of the user of the function, they don't even have to care that your function is async. It just works the same way. You might also be wondering whether this actually supports asynchronous I/O, because lots of people like asynchronous I/O. And the answer is it doesn't, because we don't need it. If you go with these 2 assumptions, that you can usually batch about 100 memcache requests, and that the multi-get of a lot of memcache requests is not a lot slower than a single memcache request, and both of these are pretty reasonable assumptions, then it follows that you get about 99% of the gains you can get from asynchronous memcache I/O, you get those from batching already. So there's, at least for memcache, there's little additional gain we can get from doing actual asynchronous I/O as opposed to just batching. But still, why don't we just use async I/O in the standard library? The main reason for that is just that when we started this, we were on Python 2, and in Python 2, we don't have an async I/O standard async I/O in the library. We are no longer on Python 2. It's still some work to migrate to using async I/O. async IO as the existing standard library doesn't support batching directly. It's pretty easy to add support for it. We have a small abstraction for it somewhere that's like 40 lines. Still, it's a little bit more different from the API that our async framework uses. So it has to migrate a bunch of code in order to switch to it. That hasn't been worth it yet for us. Last, it's also important for us that we catch mistakes because it's with the thing we have where you can just call a function directly. It's very easy to forget that this is an async function you're calling and not have a yield. It's also very easy to forget to batch two requests together and not put them in a single yield. So for that, we actually built a static analyzer that can do things like this. In this case, I wrote a function that calls two other async functions. And it should really have batched those two requests because they don't depend on each other. So our static analyzer can detect that and automatically suggest that you fix it by merging those two yields so that you can batch the requests that are made from the calls to F and G. If you want to learn more, we have a blog post that describes how we arrived at this framework and what it looks like. The async framework is also open source. You can see it on GitHub if you want. If you want to learn even more, you should join Quora because we are hiring and we need lots of people to write async code for us. So if you're interested in async or in anything else that Quora is doing in terms of engineering, talk to me or talk to one of the other Quora people here because we are looking for more people. Are there any questions right now?
Any questions for Yellow? First, let's give him a round of applause. It's a good presentation. All right, Ukas, you got a question?
Will this framework work on Python 3.7?
Yes, in fact, it will. I changed. You may have seen that it uses a decorator called @async and that it uses .async, which will not work in Python 3.7 because async will be a keyword. We fixed that by changing it to async with a Q. So right now you can actually use both. We haven't migrated our code base yet, but Python 3.7 does not exist yet.
Yeah, I was pretty mad when that became a keyword too. We had a couple of modules named async as well. Such a good word.
Yeah, I guess we're at least lucky that the framework itself is called async with a Q, so we don't have to change the name of the module itself. But yeah, we will have to change some code.
Nice. Cool. More questions? Come on, async's hot. All right, Khan's got a question.
Hey, so my question was, a lot of the traditional Python web servers have kind of trouble with the asynchronous kind of paradigm. What are you using to actually serve the requests?
So our web server itself is not really asynchronous. All of this is within a single request. So like all the asynchronous stuff we do is within a single request. So our web server basically delegates to our code that invokes the async scheduler and does batching within a single request. It doesn't go across requests. I hope that answers your question.
I see an audience answer. So, but what you're saying is that it is a request per process architecture in terms of web requests. Okay, wait.
So this is a little bit off topic, but I was really interested in that custom static analyzer that you guys wrote. Could you talk a little bit? What library did you use to write that, and like how's do you think it's worth it? Would you do more of those? How many rules do you have? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, it only uses the AST standard library. I built it. I guess if I built it again now, I might know about some more libraries that would be useful. When I wrote it, I didn't know about as many libraries yet. So it's built directly on top of the AST. It does some type inference. It can find things like undefined names and undefined functions. It can also find a lot of things related to async. Like if you are in async functions, you call another async function, and you're not calling it asynchronously, it will yell at you. And as I showed here, it can detect. It has some code that detects you did this yield, the variable x depends on it. You did not use this x before you yield it again, so that means that you don't need to yield it yet, so you can merge those two yields. And that's all just basically built as a layer on top of the AST where we record some information internally.
Very cool. Any last questions here? You're going to be around tonight, right, Yellen?
I'll be around.
All right. Great. Well, another round of applause, please. All right. So we already heard that Quora is hiring. They're hiring at both of their offices, one of which here is at 6:05 and the other one was at 6:50. Okay, so yeah, mostly across the street, so I don't think that affects the commute that much. Although it almost affected the meetup. Yeah. No, it was funny. Like, basically, the very first email said, "Hey, we're at 6:50," so we put in the location 650meetup.com. Everyone saw that, and then somebody in a later email just earlier today said, "I'll meet you at 6:05." I'm like, I was planning on being there at 6:15, but 6:05. so I'm so I'm at the other office 6:50 at 6:05. At the, it's nice being two places at the same time, or one time, one place. Okay, cool. So now we reach the middle stretch. Oh wait, this is one of those new ones that doesn't have an escape key. David, I believe you're next. Wait, did you send your presentation? Okay. So Yellow's going to go ahead and pick that up, bring that up while we have our hiring announcements and so forth. So if you are hiring or looking to be hired, or just want to say hi, now is a great time to come up here, and we got lots of mics, lots of them. So yeah. All right, David, let's hear it.
So I'm David Smith. I work at Phantom, that might say. And I came here and gave a speech a couple months ago at one of the Python meetups.
At Globality, yeah.
Hoping to hire some people. Nobody got hired.
Oh, no.
In the group. But if you are looking for a job, we are growing very fast. We have doubled our engineering team since I spoke, 3 months ago maybe.
That's great.
And
I'm surprised you have time to come, it's down here.
We just released Phantom 3.0 on Friday.
Okay.
So, as a usual startup, this is the first time I've been able to breathe in about 3 months.
And they send you out on a recruiting mission?
No, I came here myself.
Oh, okay. On his own volition?
Yes.
We're very lucky.
What we're hiring for is all engineering positions. We need product managers, project managers, Python developers, C++ developers, QA engineers. I'm the director of QA, but we need QA engineers who actually know how to do some coding and engineering.
Bonus points if you know Robot Framework.
Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
His talk was on Robot Framework last time. But no, that sounds great. Thank you, David. He can't be the only one. I think there's another. Okay, there you go. Well, I'll let Sean go first.
Hi, my name is Sean. I've been here at the last two or three of these. So I work for a company called Simple Eagle. We're a small startup in Mountain View. We're definitely hiring. We're a Django shop. So anyone with Python, Django experience, you want to come work for like a small, I think we're about 30 people now. So actually, yeah, I brought my CTO, managed to convince him to come. He was hard at work on something, getting interrupted by us all the time, but managed to get him to come down here. But yeah, so Python experience, Django experience. If you like building actual products that actually go in front of customers, it's really rewarding. I love it, love making the change. So yeah.
Showing off in front of your boss. I love my company. I love it so much. I can't wait to hang out with my CTO all the time. No, Patrick seems like a cool guy. Okay, yes, Svetlana, right? First time Pyninsular, yeah, and recruiting for
Heartflow.
You gotta speak into the mic though.
Hi everybody, my name is Svetlana. I'm an engineering recruiter at Heartflow. We are a software as a service company, and we are a startup at over 240 employees right now. And we are also hiring Python engineers, testers, and senior and junior levels, all levels. We are operating also on the Django framework, and we are located in Redwood City. Great, fun environment, and amazing people to work with. It's a pleasure to be a part of Heartflow. If you're interested, please come up to our table in the middle table at the very end. our engineers are here. They can tell you more details and answer all your questions you may have on technical level.
And you do use Python?
Yeah, we do, of course, yeah.
Okay. What components do you use Python for? Actual hearts?
So Python for developing applications and developing, testing, and maintaining applications.
Cool. I guess if you have even more questions, there's a whole group back there.
Yeah. We have a lot of professionals who can answer all the technical questions, but you don't need to have any medical background, even though we are doing the 3D modeling of patients' hearts and coronary artery disease, and we are measuring the blood flow.
You don't have to be a heart surgeon to work there. Sounds good.
You don't have to be.
All right.
Great.
So,
thank you.
Great. Thank you, Svetlana. I'll take that too. All right. More hiring announcements. This is a lot of hiring. It must be hiring season. Svetlana, you're a recruiter. Is it hiring season? It is hiring season. Okay. I guess you worked your way through the graduating class over the summer, and now you're looking for the experience types. Is Instagram hiring? Always. Facebook and Instagram always hiring. Older startup, yes. Not going gray though. Still looking young. All right. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Okay. Let's see. We got more hiring announcements. I swear there are more people hiring here than looking, but there are a couple looking. If you're looking, now's a good time to come up. Sean, stay seated. Your CTO's here. I know. All right, cool. Well, there's a big group here, and they'll be around. So, have to get up in front of everyone to find a job. I'll take on the last announcement. Shopkick is hiring. I work for a place called Shopkick. It's in Redwood City, and we are looking for lead developers. We already staffed up on young, junior, fresh meats, including one of them who is going to be nice enough to give us a talk tonight. His name is David Knoppers, and the K is pronounced like Knuth. And hopefully he grows up to be like Knuth as well. Donald Knuth, David Knoppers, I could hear it. But this is interesting, he went to a boot camp, Are we taking a risk on him? Are we getting a good value? He's going to tell us the whole story. We signed a contract, but it is at will. So, anyways, so no, yeah. But this is actually really interesting. It's a really interesting topic. Boot camps are really hot right now. He's going to tell you exactly how much. Give it up for David.
Hey guys, after seeing that previous presentation, I realized I need to clarify one thing up ahead of time. I did not go to a graphic design boot camp, and this presentation reflects it. We've got about 15 minutes, and I want to leave extra space for questions, and about 12 weeks in a typical boot camp. So that's about a minute per week of the student experience. But before that, I just want to tell you why I'm presenting about this in the first place. So I originally went to college for earth sciences, and my first job out of college was at National Geographic. And there are two relevant things that I did there. One was study the Common Core standards, which sounds really random, but it's going to come up later in the presentation. And the other thing was look at this circa 2011, 2012 brand new phenomenon, which is all these online courses, including a lot of fairly promising online courses for programming, but I wasn't going to be a programmer, so I didn't actually take any when I was studying them. I come from a family of educators, which is another reason I'm interested in this. My one sibling, both my parents, almost all my aunts and uncles are either teachers or professors. And so as a rite of passage, I became a math teacher and actually quite enjoyed it. But once I moved out to California, I started getting more and more interested in programming. My best friend has been a programmer his entire life. He's been telling me forever to get into it. He was an early mentor. And just as in terms of the background that led to this presentation, starting years ago, I basically just started going to programming meetups from here to Walnut Creek, California, all the time. I was interested not only in learning at the meetups, but in the meetups themselves and the sort of like the educational environments that did or did not exist at certain meetups. So yeah, I went to a school called Holberton, and this presentation isn't actually about that because that would be boring both for me and for you. I applied to so many coding schools. I don't remember. Like sometimes I'll like see a logo for one. I'll be like, oh yeah, like I interviewed there. Like it's just been it's been a long road. And I'd rather talk about some of the general phenomena that happen at these coding schools, and also when I go to these meetups, I hear a lot of people talking about them, and sometimes like engineering managers, or I have a couple of friends who are recruiters, will talk about the sort of like black box phenomenon, where like the marketing is often very similar, the websites are often very similar, and unless you've been to one, it's kind of unclear what actually happens. All you know is that on the other side, there are some students who seem very good and some students who seem like they need more help, and what's actually going on. And then I did put Shopkick at the end there because I'm a server engineer there now, but this won't be about that. Yeah, it's been great so far. I also apologize ahead of time. This is going to be the least Pythonic Pyninsula presentation you'll ever see, but hopefully you still see it as relevant. And that's interesting. Is it coming up that way? Okay, all my slides are slightly zoomed in. Ooh, I didn't even. Wow. All right. Well, again, okay, sure. You know what? We're just going to keep going. So, two central questions. First of all, what are the schools? And even Googling bootcamp logos, I was like, oh my goodness, there are dozens of them, right? And then usually there are kind of themes to the logos. There's some sort of clever, almost geometric thing going on, and then there's a word like dev or app, sometimes coding. Sometimes it's a mountain, sometimes it's a dojo, sometimes it's a camp, sometimes it's just an action word like galvanize. And then also, I don't know if anyone notices, and since it's slightly zoomed in apparently, you can't see all of them, but at least 2 of these schools no longer exist. Does anyone know which ones, or want to shout one out? Someone just pointed to one correctly. Yeah, the Iron Yard is gone, unfortunately. It was actually, they had a really interesting mission, but I guess they ran out of money.
Is iron like a cursed word? Did Flatiron School also like disappear?
Well, Flatiron School apparently is doing really well. So I've been following media coverage of these coding schools for years, and I don't know what happened, but the New York Times is in love with Flatiron School. Anytime that you read a coding camp article in the New York Times, it'll be like, they all suck, everything sucks, it's all a scam. But there's Flatiron School, they're a full stack, 12-week, like, the same pitch. They have a 95% placement rate. Let's get to some of those commonalities, because I know even for me as someone who went to a coding school, it's disorienting. I can't imagine coming from traditional CS or recruiting what it feels like. So you find one of these logos, you click on one of the sites, and this is so I had to say there is some Python in this talk. That's why this corny joke is up here. You click on it, and they're like, all right, you're going to learn how to learn in 3 different interviews. I was told that for schools I interviewed at. Or maybe you're going to learn how to Google. You're going to work on your Google foo. You're going to learn how to build your skills fast, because tech is a developing industry. And you're going to learn how to grow in your company, because I'm sure you've heard this all before. Okay, this is actually bad because I can't see all of the things on my slides. I'm sorry. This is good enough. Okay, cool. So they go. So especially if you read about them, they usually say 12 to 14 weeks, but that isn't actually true. Holborn is at least 9 months and sometimes 2 years. There's another school in Fremont, I want to say, called 42, and that's 3 years long. So most often these programs are 12 to 14 weeks, but there's actually quite a bit of variation. And then they're usually in person. There are online ones, but I don't know anything about them, so I'm not talking about them as much. And they're often blended. So you'll get a 12 to 14 week school, but there's actually kind of like a secret 3-week school ahead of time where you have like very specific prerequisites, and they're checked, and there's online grading, and you need to get all of that done before you show up. And then, of course, they're themed. Some of them are themed almost entirely around mobile development, like Make School. Some of them are front-end-ish. I think for marketing purposes, none of them want to say that. So they'll say, like, we're a full-stack JavaScript school, which, of course, is possible. But usually what that means is they're front-end. But, they're front-end-ish. There's data science. I know Galvanize, and I think a couple of others have, like, straight up, we will prepare you for junior data science. And then there's full stack but short. Coding Dojo is an example of that, where they're like, we're going to give you like a full stack CS background, but by the way, it's 14 weeks. And then there's ones that try a little bit more to be traditional CS, and 42 and Holberton are like that. So those are what the schools are. I'm going to talk about how how learning actually occurs later. But the next question, we'll see if the forward button works. Yeah, that was pretty good. Next question is, who are the students? So especially if you're new to this, you click on it, and I swear there's one guy who does all the photos for all of the coding schools. And there's some smiling person either sitting at a laptop or at a desktop or both. Usually the name of the school is like on a sticker or just like somehow on the computer itself, conveniently within view of the camera. And like, and people are really smiling. And then, I mean, that's about it, right? There'll be some testimonials. I don't think it actually gives you a sense of who goes to these schools, right? It's so like, it's not only so positive, but it's so uniform that, again, even for me as someone who went to one of these schools, it's hard to actually figure out like, who are the human beings who actually go to these schools? And of course, I spent years going to meetups, and I went to a school, so I'd like to think I have experience in knowing who the human beings are who go to these schools. So I'm going to give you a couple of archetypes that are very common. And one of the things that's most surprising when I talk to people, I don't know why that's happening. One of the things that's most surprising when I talk to people about these schools is people don't know actually a large number of people who go to these boot camps essentially use them as finishers. So we'll go through all these archetypes, but the first one is you get people that actually have like really strong STEM backgrounds, and then sometimes actually have a decent amount of coursework done in CS. Holberton had a couple of people who had either almost completed CS degrees or actually completed CS degrees and wanted practical industry experience or whatever. And you get a lot of people who have degrees from pretty prestigious schools in different engineering fields, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, which was surprising to me. I thought you could just go straight into coding if you're like that. And they see one of these boot camps as a finisher, as opposed to, this is where I'm going to learn computer science. It's I did electrical engineering. I have a couple of CS classes under my belt, but I haven't built a lot of projects. I'm having trouble getting interviews. I want to be a programmer. I'm going to go into these schools to finish. And sometimes the students are actually quite good. And then I talk to them and I'm like, like you have an amazing GPA and a degree in electrical engineering, and you've built these projects before. How are you not able to like find an internship, like an entry-level internship? And then they often say, I'm really shy and I want help with networking. And then there are sorcerers. These are marketed very heavily, but they do exist. I apologize for making a Dungeons and Dragons reference, but like if any of you have played Dungeons and Dragons, there are wizards, and the wizards study magic and then they can use it. Sorcerers are people who have like really, really strong innate magical abilities, and they just need some practice. And you will find a couple. They're pretty rare, but you will find a couple of these pretty much regardless of the boot camp. We certainly had a couple of them at Holberton, and they're just really, really, really good intuitive programmers. They should have been programmers, but for some reason, they went to art school first. And then they usually have a lot of really interesting personal projects, and they work their butts off because they are obsessed with programming, and they're always at the school. And then, the PR guy comes and takes a bunch of pictures of them in the school because they're from art school and they're kicking butt. And then they get hired, and then they do a great job, and it's like, wow, this school like motivates people, and this programmer kicks butt. And then you hire from that school, and the person you hire doesn't actually do very well, and you're like, what's going on? Again, it's because you've got all of these different archetypes going into the black box. So I'm sure I'm running out of time, so I'll speed it up. You get the career changers. I'd probably put myself there. I took a couple of classes online actually in CS before going to Holberton. I have some context. I don't have a hard STEM background, but we did, math, and I was teaching math, and I did statistics and stuff for earth sciences. You dabble, and then, excuse me, you go to the school, And then you get the people who are actually quite new to this. I talk to them at the meetups too, and then they often express surprise at the percentage of people within their coding schools who are actually quite new to this. And we're going to return to this because I think this is one of the biggest areas of potential and one of the current problems, I'll just say it, with the boot camps, so to speak. So what happens when the students go to school? Well, you get a lot of this. I don't know who that guy is, but they're all staring. That's me. I guess it's not a big enough picture for me to make that joke. But you have all these different marketing, and then you have all these different archetypes. Pretty much regardless of the marketing for the school, what happens is you show up and it's group work. Direct instruction is pretty rare. Again, it's about learning how to learn, learning how to Google, and you get some sort of intro to CS, and that can vary from being that mandatory prereq course to just being months. If it's a longer school. And then you jump into projects. And again, the projects are group work, and it's very open-ended. Here's an objective. Here are some resources. This is what you should do. Almost every school I interviewed with presented pretty much the same thing. Now, why did I bother to mention Common Core in my first slide? There has been a debate going on since Common Core standards were implemented, at least partially, in the United States about how math should be taught. And so back in 2011, 2012, when I was teaching, well, 2013, 2014, I taught for a while, there were all these discussions about what we really need to do is we need to architect some higher level concepts in math, and then we need to give the students group work, and then we need to leave them alone, because group work and conversation, it enables this very authentic, intuitive learning of these higher level math concepts, and it's just a better model than what we have now. And I'm definitely not saying that's wrong, and that works spectacularly for some people, but it's basically the less mentorship you have in math at home, the more scared you are of math, the more support you need from the teacher. And so there have just been debates been raging for years now in STEM education about how much help do you give to students if you want to move to this more libertarian learning environment. And then just a couple of other things very quickly. Most of the coding schools know that they need to teach something that's not taught at a lot of traditional colleges, and usually they end up adding some sort of version control. Every assignment's on GitHub, and you have to do your group projects in GitHub, and you need to learn how to do a pull request and how to review someone else's pull request, that sort of thing. You usually, in some way, shape, or form, work on deployment, and so at least when I interviewed at Coding Dojo, they basically have 3 full stack projects, and then you deploy them to a server, and at least in theory, you learn deployment. And then, yeah, you're going to do some whiteboarding pretty much no matter where you go. And then usually they also practice the heck out of classic CS interview questions, which is, I think, relevant for the recruiters, which we will get to. So, and then what happens? Speaking of marketing, I also thought this was funny. The course report does a lot of coverage right now of the coding schools, and I honestly forget which one of these is actually from course report, but they did this thing where they had student spotlights, and they did a format like that, and then every coding school in the Valley took that formatting. So if you go on any of their websites, you see once again what appears to be made by the same guy, which is a student spotlight. And again, the student spotlight is usually on a sorcerer, because those are such good marketing for the coding schools. But yeah, so what happens? What happens when you have this, when you take what sometimes is actually curriculum-wise seemingly pretty good computer science curriculum, and you put it on a computer in a computer lab somewhere in Silicon Valley. You bring in all of these students, and you say, get to work. Time to learn to code. And at least from what I've seen, and from talking to people about this for years, the finishers, the people who already had degrees in math or engineering and or some formal coursework in CS or both, they tend to finish, and then they do well and they interview well, and you don't really have to worry about them. The sorcerers and Sourcel, and again, there's a lot of hype about that, because because it's really exciting when you take someone who does not have a lot of traditional CS background, a lot of CS ability, and then have them do really well. And then for the career changers, it's a little more mixed. And then for the people who are actually new to programming, which is usually central to the marketing for the coding schools, I think it's very mixed. Some people crush it, some people don't. And I guess from a recruiter's perspective, you don't necessarily care. You just pick the ones who crushed it. But one of the points that I want to make is that some of these schools actually have curriculums that are extremely promising. And if the industry works with them on basically teaching and support and making sure that the people who are actually new to the coding schools keep up with the material and keep motivated, I think you can see these outcomes get a lot better. But one thing, again, when I go to meetups or to bars or whatever, that recruiters start asking me, or engineering managers ask me is, how do you actually differentiate between any of this? So we talked about some of the archetypes that go in. We talked a little bit about how things are actually taught, but like, what do you do, right? If you're an engineering manager and you're at least considering one of these schools, and for the record, I think you should, what do you do? The first thing I would do is I wouldn't take anything from chapter 1 of cracking the coding interview. Regardless of the format of the school, it's very common to practice the heck out of the very, reverse a linked list, or basic questions about binary trees, basic questions about big O. Even though some of that might seem like traditional CS, regardless of whether the coding schools are doing a good job, and again, some of them definitely are, so I hope this didn't seem too critical. My point is, regardless of whether or not the coding school is doing a good job, they're probably going to know the answers to these. Even though it might only be a 14-week program, you should expect that any of those questions are going to be answered pretty easily. So I would personally recommend, in terms of technical interview questions, asking about some of the more open-ended concepts. So a question where you really emphasize like modularity. This is going to be where your piece of code fits in the program. Can you think about that? Can you reason about that? Can you make it readability? Readability. Can you make it readability? Can you make it readable? Can you make it rewritable a little bit? Like, if I give you these 3 requirements and then I add a requirement, can you work with that? Can you change that on the spot? I think that you're likely to get a better signal from that. If one of the schools seems interested to you, in you, or excuse me, if you seem interested in one of those schools or recruiting from them, they often love sending you students, or they love having you come for an on-site interview. So just contact them. If you look at one, you're like, hey, this looks pretty good. I promise you, they will send you 5 students to talk to in a minute. So, take them, talk to them, and see what you think. And yeah, I think it's a very interesting area. I've been reading every article that comes up on Google News for it for years, but this is my first time presenting on it. So if you think that, basically, if you have any thoughts, just talk to me after this, or ask me a question right now.
Very interesting presentation. I'm sure that there are some very interesting questions now. Oh, we got one over there. Okay. I'll ask one in the meantime. What are the revenue models of these schools?
That's a totally fair question. So yeah, I should probably include that, because it's interesting to me, at least, but all of this is interesting to me. They kind of vary. And so the most common one is you put down a deposit of several $1,000s, which usually was not initially part of the school, but after a couple of iterations, they decided to have it. You put down a model of several $1,000s. There's a grace period of a month or 2 after you're finished with the program in which you're expected to job hunt. And then there's a lump sum, usually between $10,000 and $20,000, that you pay in installments. And then some go by percentage instead, basically.
what school? I didn't really get it from the talk. Sorry if I missed it. What school did you go to, and what sort of language was it focused on? And then is now that what you do in your day job?
Yeah, fair enough. I went to Holberton, and the primary languages there, since it's longer, they have time for like a more of a traditional CS curriculum. So it's like relatively traditional CS and C for 3 months, and then a little bit of JavaScript and a lot of Python. And sure enough, Shopkick, believe it or not, uses a lot of Python. So that transition's been pretty smooth for me.
So which archetype does Mahmoud fit?
I didn't go to coding school. Don't loop me into this.
Mahmoud is both a finisher and a sorcerer because he's very good for my MBA and natural. What did you say?
I didn't finish my MBA. That's one thing I didn't finish. But I did finish my CS degree. Got a minor in business.
I see.
Just curious, which would focus on data science or statistical applications, or does it ever get to that level?
Are you asking which schools focus on that? So I know Galvanize does. This is something that I personally haven't been that interested in. I loved like making games and stuff in Python. So I don't want to I don't want to call myself an authority on that. Galvanize definitely does. Metis is another one, METIS. And I don't know if anyone else knows any off the top of their heads. Those are the two that I always hear about in the news.
Okay. Thanks.
Are you interested in attending one? Exploring. All right. And so are you partisan in this? Do you have any recommendations?
I just don't want to do that. I feel like because I went to one, I can't play that game.
Well, I'll tell you.
You know me in person.
Yeah, there's this one 42, and despite the number, they will not take anyone over the age of 30.
Yeah. I disagree
so
with
yeah.
decision 42.
Narrow the decision tree.
I guess I will say this. I floated around enough in the meetuposphere long enough before going to a school that I got to know people, and I got to see them go through App Academy and Coding Dojo and Coding House, which is also now defunct, and Dev Bootcamp and a number of other ones. And the one thing I can say for sure is make sure that you've taken a couple of. I think online resources are actually really good right now. I think MIT's online resources are great. I think Coursera and edX have a lot of good stuff. I would start there, both in terms of the outcomes at the end and just like having a positive experience in the schools themselves. The strongest signal that I've seen was completion of a couple of those courses. And also, for whatever it's worth for the recruiters, I wanted to include outcomes data in this presentation, but it's always so fuzzy, and you're like, I don't really trust that percentage. But the one thing that like in like the New York Times and the Economist and the coverage of these schools that comes up again and again is, at least according to those outlets, the most reliable positive signal for a bootcamp graduate is not whether they graduated from the bootcamp, but whether or not they completed a couple of those courses beforehand.
And you're talking about online courses.
Yeah. So the very first course I took a while ago was just Intro to Computation and Programming with Python, which is on edX for free and very common. So the course runs all the time.
So everyone should go download my O'Reilly course, Enterprise Software with
Python. I'm sorry, I forgot. The first thing I took was Mahmoud.
That'll be a very strong signal to me. So anyways, yeah, I mean, speaking of like outcomes data, like I looked at some outcomes data of traditional education, right? I was surprised by some of the numbers. 9% of computer science degree holders are currently not employed. And another one that was interesting is that only 55% of people with law degrees are employed full-time. So you can understand some of that career-changing thing there. Anywho, but no, very interesting presentation. Mark, did you have one question? Oh, he had a quick question. We have a second, sure.
So you said that the process of teaching resembles Common Core. So you have a lot of group work. So you're going to get some direction at the beginning, and then send a couple of people's off and to corner and have them go for it. So what if somebody gets like stuck on, especially for the CS intro stuff, if somebody gets stuck on a concept, what kind of support is there from like the actual teacher or teachers? Are there office hours? Is it like, can you call somebody over and be like,
Yeah, what indeed? So usually there's a protocol, and often if you're applying to a billion coding camps, you become interested in that question and you ask them, they'll answer. But the pattern generally goes that they define some sort of workflow for you. Here's what you should do before asking one of the teachers, and then that workflow usually looks like you've thought about it, you've Googled it, you've thought about it again, you've consulted the recommended resources. But you do get into that game, which I saw again as a math teacher, which is one reason I got interested in this, which is that the people that if you haven't taken a couple of courses, if you're actually new to it when you go into one of these schools, and a lot of them again market themselves as like you can do that, you definitely see the too embarrassed to ask phenomenon. And I haven't seen or I haven't heard of people like being pressured not to ask. There was a reference in the New York Times to that happening at Dev Bootcamp. I have no idea if that's true, but you definitely see people who are like, well, I followed the procedure, but you know, even though it's day one, I don't want to ask what a Boolean is, or I don't want to ask what a for loop is, and then they don't. And it's too bad, in my opinion. It's sad.
That's interesting. Mark, you changed careers. What was your title before you got a software engineering job at eBay?
I was a graduate student in Arabic literature.
He can speak Arabic. Oh, question here? You got one.
Yeah. So my question was, what did it look like for you after the boot camp ended? And the reason I asked is because I attended like a boot camp like thing like about a year and a half ago, and I got a job like a month ago in something unrelated to what I did the boot camp in.
Right.
And what made the difference for me is like learning how to career search. I actually took another like boot camp sort of focused on like that teaches you how to like career search for programming jobs specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, so I'm just kind of curious, like, what your, like, kind of process was afterwards.
Sure, and let me say something real fast. Thank you for mentioning that. I should have included that in the presentation. A lot of the bootcamp people you talk to have already gone to a bootcamp. So I said I was going to remain nonpartisan. I would say that Holborn's networking is pretty good, and so they basically set me up for a couple of interviews, and a couple of them I really blew. But you know, I got used to that process. And then basically by virtue of coming to a bunch of these meetups, I met Moshe and Mahmoud. I really wanted to work for them, so that worked out nicely. But yeah, sorry, I didn't completely answer that question. That time span was about a month and a half.
Nice. Yeah, if I start a boot camp, I'm going to do it a little bit different. I'm going to use that picture of you where no one is smiling and there are no logos in the picture.
That was a journalist, not a PR person. That's why it looks like that.
That's the real story. Everyone just frowning, no teachers present, trying to like get a question through Stack Overflow without it being closed as duplicate. Anyways, okay, cool. So yeah, we're headed into, well, again, thank you, David, for sharing that experience. Very important thing in our cultural zeitgeist right now. But yeah, so we have another announcement section here. Jelly, you have one? Okay.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate, Quora is hiring. We are hiring for product roles, platform roles, machine learning, infrastructure, data science also. If you are interested in any of those, go to quora.com/careers and we'll list all the positions we are currently hiring for.
Don't you have a question open that's like, can I get a job at Quora? And then like everyone, no? Like
There's probably a question like that on the product, yes.
Okay. You got dog food. That's what that is, right? All right. Cool. Other announcements? People looking? Anyone got any cool lightning talks or demos? I can demo a thing. So right now it is Wiki Loves Monuments season. Does anyone know what Wiki Loves Monuments is? No. I got skills. Yeah. Have you heard of Wiki Loves Monuments? That's my question. No? So Wiki Loves Monuments is the world's largest photography competition. And what it is people go around and they take pictures of what we call built heritage, meaning buildings, statues, ruins, all this sort of stuff. And they take pictures of those for the public domain, basically. And so we have a website now, thankfully, wikilovesmonuments.org. And it's been going for a few years, but it is Guinness Book of World Records' largest photography competition in the world, something like 300, some 1,000 entries per year, and it is a lot to sort through. I built the tool used to judge that competition, and so that's taken up a lot of my time right now. But not a lot of people get to see that. You know, there are hundreds of jurors, but there are tens of thousands of people who submit images. And so here's the blog. The thing that we just launched over the weekend is maps dot, and then you type the whole thing out again. Wiki loves monuments. Oh no, monuments. All right, monuments .org. The keyboard on this Mac is just delightful. Anyways, okay. So yeah, here's Wiki loves monuments. It's a thing called Monumental, and it's got a Python backend, but it's really a whole lot of JavaScript, and it lets you do something like this. So Ireland is live already, and if you like, you know, go to Dublin, then you'll see all these nice green pins here. If you click here, it shows you St. Mary's Pro Cathedral, as opposed to the amateur league that would be. Anyways, yeah, I don't know what the Pro Cathedral is, but as you can see here, right, like, you know, here are the images, and if you log in or create an account, you can, like, you know, drag and drop your images into this, and it'll automatically upload it to commons.wikimedia.org under a very nice license. It'll name it according to the EXIF data, and it's pretty cool. And you can basically see its Wikidata entry here, and I mean, if you don't know about Wikidata, I could go on for a little while about this, but basically it's a like sort of tuple database, like a knowledge graph of basically everything there is to know on Wikipedia, as much as can be structured anyways. But getting back to Wiki Loves Monuments, here in Monumental, there are a lot of ways to contribute, and if you are someone who likes to take pictures, even if they're not great pictures, you can find some, like, you know, places that people wouldn't normally go. Like, Mark, you're going to Galway, right? All right. A lot of people go to Galway? All right. I'd never heard of it until you said you're going there. But see, like this one right here, Roscombe Early Medieval Ecclesiastical Site. That one doesn't have any, it just rolls off the tongue. It doesn't have any images, you know? So you can, you just like click on that. And even though it has Wikidata things, even though it's a national monument of Ireland, no image. And so, yeah, we have all of UNESCO's stuff in here. All, like, you know, basically we're importing these monument lists as fast as we can, and we get them from government sources, and the data is a mess, but we're bringing them into Wikidata as fast as we can. And so we have like a lot of the participating countries out there already. So yeah, I would say here are all the places that are participating. If you're planning on traveling, do take some snapshots, you know, and upload them using Monumental. That's my talk. Thank you. All right, other presentations, other announcements. Yes.
Does anyone know of a good like 2 to 3 style fixer that'll convert your formats and percentage signs into like F strings?
That's a very good question. Very topical. Do you know who Ukesh is?
Shantanu, our own static analysis tool can do that now. Oh. At least for percent formatting. I didn't do the dot format.
But it does F strings. Yes. So it does percent formatting to F strings, and F strings are faster, which is nice, provided using Python 3. Okay, that's a good question. More questions. Come on, that's a success story right there. This is Quora. You can ask any question you want. Over there, Rory, back in the back. I see you. None? All right. Just Mark has a question. Oh, okay. Mark wants to move it along. I guess you see what kind of, I mean, I guess that's maybe something Moshe might have said. So you're doing a good job being our stand-in Moshe. All right. So yes, getting back on schedule. Our next talk is by Facebook engineer Cooper Leitz, and he is going to be telling us about deploying an internal version of PyPI, the Python Package Index. Come on up here, Cooper. All right, give him a round of applause.
Thank you. All right, that looks good. So yeah, my name's Cooper Lees. I have a very thick Australian accent, so if I get too excited or whatever, wave at me, tell me to slow down, speak proper English. We don't really do that. I've been at Facebook for probably about have been at Facebook for 4.5 years. I've been in many different teams, sort of started in like our firefighting SRO group. The infrastructure was still a pretty messy back in 2012. And so I went from that team, and then I spent a lot of time in our network team, worked on our FBOSS open source switch, and IPv6ing a lot of things at Facebook. And then recently, Wukash talked me into joining the Python team, and it's been a lot of fun sort of learning a lot more about Python and getting better at it. The main project that I was sort of brought on to do, and I haven't got all the way there yet, and we'll talk about it throughout this talk, is at Facebook, sort of, if you do Python, it's very different to the outside world. The concept of virtual envs, using PyPI outside doesn't really exist. We sort of invented, if you've ever used the PEX format that's open source, we sort of use an internal version of that called PAR, and then we have a sort of newer version called ZAR, but I won't go into that. And basically, that's just a zip file that jams all your dependencies together, and you can deploy it. It has a bit of a metadata around it and a shell script to run it. So we sort of wanted to and make our sort of internal stack more like the outside world. And because we're doing that, it's awesome. You can come and work better. We are hiring as well. And I have a wide range of jobs, all the way from an Instagram developer all the way up to working in Facebook backend. There are WhatsApp jobs that use Python. And then there's even Oculus, where they're starting to do crazy things on Windows and trying to use Python there, which is always good fun because they want our libraries just to magically work on Windows, which we know that doesn't always happen. So yes, the main page is facebook.com/careers, Teams Instagram. Instagram.com/careers goes to some weird external company called Careers something. So it doesn't really work. They didn't save that URL. So I'm sort of going to go through why we have a mirror inside of Facebook now. We have multiple, but we'll go into that. Why? Because I'd say most people just point at the CDN and use pypi.python.org. Is it .org? Yeah, it is. Sort of where we are today at Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. I'm going to focus more on Instagram because that's where I've spent most of my energy. Because if you don't know, that all the back end of Instagram is Python 3.6.2 and all using a lot of open source projects on the outside, from the outside. And then I'll go on to sort of where we want to get to the rest of this year. So I expect most people here to know what PyPI is, but I thought I'd better put a slide in there and say PyPI is the Python packaging index. It's when you use pip, it's what pip goes and talks to. So when you do pip install click or pip install something, you'll go and hit the CDN. Now the CDN is nicely hosted by Fastly. So the PyPI website's pretty quick all around the world, and we all get to take advantage of it. There is a small core team that sort of look after that. And all the sort of files that when you upload to PyPI, whatever, that all lives on Amazon in S3. And then it all gets spread around the world on Fastly CDN. Thank you, Fastly. There is a new version coming out that they're working on called Warehouse, is its code name, at pypi.org. There's a whole lot of talks in the distutils mailing list about it. Donald Schuff and a few other guys are all working on that thing. So I expect that to ship, they're hoping later this year, but after dealing with the Python packaging world, it's probably going to be next year. But you can sort of go and use it. So numbers I pulled on the weekend, there's over 115,000 projects. A project is like Click or like PyOpenSSL, et cetera, et cetera. There's 769,000 releases, so that's a lot. 988,000 files, a lot of users. You can just go to the new pypi.org and they give you these statistics up to date, which is pretty cool, and I thought a little bit interesting. So my first question for you out there, does anyone else here mirror PyPI internally? Shopkick does. Where do you work? Okay, and yourself? Phantom, and you guys have an internal mirror? What do you guys use to do the internal mirror syncing? Do you know the software? Is it called Bandersnatch? Or there's one other one who I forget the name. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, well, we'll talk to that more about that in a second. Who here actually verifies and runs tester packages when they pull them down from the internet? Because, you know, no one's going to put bad packages up Mahmood shakes his head. So Shopkick's got a secure stack. We're not perfect either, right? So we have a very arcane manual process where you download all the source tarballs today and put them into our sort of third-party code system, and it does run the unit tests most of the time. People can turn it off really easily. And one thing Python doesn't have sorted, like newer languages like Go and sort of have a bit more better, we don't have a unified testing framework. So, you know, you've got PyTest, you've then got, what's Moshi's favorite again? Tox. And then you've got Nose, and, you know, each have their advantages, and so you can do different things. So our goal is to try and make this a little better and easier configurable for people so that they can actually run the tests when they pull these things down. Another common thing I find when you download the source tarballs from pypi.python.org, a lot of people rip the unit tests out to keep the packages smaller. Good idea, but sucks for when I want to actually run my unit test to see in my container if the code does what it should actually do. So that's a thing we didn't do. So there's a few reasons why we mirror. One, I don't want to be down, but who's heard of this lovely gentleman to the left here? Who here uses JavaScript and got left padded? So if you don't know what that is, left padded is where this gentleman got a little upset, so he deleted his package off the mirroring for JavaScript. And sorry, that's it. NPM. I forgot the term. It's a lot harder to do on Python with PyPI, but it is doable. But we don't ever want to have that sort of problem. So we want to have the ability, so you can, with some of the mirroring software, you can turn off deleting. I've sort of done that because the number, the gigabytes needed to mirror this for us is not worth the hassle. So I don't delete files, and also the speed and the reliability, right? So now Instagram, every time they build a new virtual env to deploy, hit the mirror. Every time we run some things to automatically try and update packages, we hit the mirror. I didn't really want to pound. I didn't think it was fair for all our automation to pound pypi.python.org. They have really good CDN, as I said, but still. The other thing it gets, they let anyone put projects up there. You know, that dodgy guy, he's got code up there. A lot of us would have code up there. So we're still all blindly pulling in code. And I'm going to talk about in a little bit what we've sort of done to try and negate that risk, but it's still there. And then one of the extended things I want to do is we're going to start having our own mirrors internally to share common libraries between different repositories. So we can build a wheel, upload it. Instagram uses a lot of common code from Facebook's main code base that we call FB code and so forth. So we want to be able to do that. So what do we got today? So today at Facebook, it's kind of caveman-like because we have to manually download the sources, get all the dependencies ourselves. A nice hack that I found is using the pip download with no binary. It gives you all the sources and all the dependency sources. So that saves me a lot of time when I want to update, you know, fun things like requests or things that have like 6 different dependencies, and I have to manually update them and then make sure I don't screw any other modules up. This is what I want to try and make the computer do because it's tedious and no one ever wants to do it. So, you know, our team, some people go, oh, the request library isn't up to date. Can you update it for us? Well, we don't want to do it either. So like, it's a painful thing when you don't have the nice way to do pip. Instagram used to be the same, but they would upload the tarballs to a HTTP mirror and they would use the find links kind of option with pip. So if you don't know what find links is, that you can have a directory, HTTP endpoint, or I think a local file path that you can point that at, and it'll go and look at the source tarballs and work out what the modules are and try and install them. So Instagram was sort of in between where Facebook's main code base is and where we want to be. So why did we bother? Well, we wanted to make our lovely developers happy. There was a nice animation there to make fun of Carl, who's here tonight, but I had to go PDF, so he gets scared. But now in all our dev containers at Instagram, if you want to try a new version or try a new module, we can just do pip install and it hits our internal mirror, so it pulls it down nice and quickly. You can then import it into your dev code and start developing. Developers get happy. Hopefully they see if there's bad code that they work that out, and then they write their nice unit test around it. We have happy devs. No one likes sticking around, pulling down the sources and pulling that in. So this is sort of our infrastructure. Now with Facebook, so it's going to be over the top. I have a lot of this infrastructure that I don't have to look after and I can plug it in. I also have to cater for whenever you put any service up at Facebook, it has to be a data center has to be able to disappear. So that's why I'm showing that there's sort of 2 there. I actually have 3 because I want a 3rd copy over in Sweden. So I have one so Primeville, Oregon is our sort of West Coast data center. and Forest City, North Carolina. And then I also have another one over in Luleå, Sweden. That's where the data freezes up there in the Arctic Circle. So basically in the middle there, you'll see I have a task. So the circles sort of represent a container. So think of it as Docker. Internally at Facebook, we call our system Tupperware. It's been around for a long, long time now. But it's basically LXCs with some nice wrapness around it and scheduling abilities. So at the top there, we have a process that I've called Banda Wrapper, where I wrap the Banda Snatch library that's available on PyPI today. And then I use that to mirror in all the projects, and I've now added a Thrift upload API to it so that we can upload our own wheels, if you build a wheel, so that you can have it in different mirrors. And then if anyone knows, you just drop a pip.conf in your virtual env or in your home directory, and you can point it at as many mirrors as you want. So then we write all our files to Gluster, which is a POSIX-like style file system, and I just have Nginx sitting in front of that. And ProxyGen is basically what our load balancer is at Facebook that runs the website. So we have ones for the actual website and ones for internal services. So I just stick it behind there. So I don't actually have to run the web load balancers, which is good. I used to be in that team. I don't want to do it anymore. So that makes it nice and easy. So we have pypi.facebook.com. One funny lame thing is our split DNS for facebook.com doesn't work. So you can actually resolve the DNS name externally, but you won't be able to get there. So I have all stats about that. It's probably hard to see, but I sort of see how out of date my mirror is because there's a last modified tile and that. We're generally 30,000 seconds behind because of how slow the network file system is. But we only need to be up to date once or twice a day, so call it a day. I keep putting in little speed up hacks to thread more and whatnot for the I/O on Bandersnatch. So you're going to get those features for free if you go and use it. And then the rsync times is how I push the packages to the other mirrors. So generally I download it on one, verify it's all good, push it out to the world. And I get to see, how busy PyPI has been. Sometimes this goes up to like 400 or 500 packages. And that means that there's been a new release or releases for, 500 different packages, which is, gets pretty busy. Monday morning is a lot busier. So everyone gets excited on Monday morning, and Friday evening. People really like to get their code out on a Friday evening, which is a great time to ship new code because, what could go wrong? But wait, Cooper, you said there's security in this talk. Well, there is. Don't let that big snake get you. We're still pulling in code, and we don't have a way to sort of trust. So if someone changed the package from the mirror, my mirror is going to blindly sync it, right? It's not smart enough to know or care. So I thought, right, we got to do something. So I got talking. I actually saw a talk I didn't get to go to PyCon this year, but I saw a talk about pip, and a coworker sent it to me, and so I watched it. And he showed a very good new feature of pip 8 that came out that very little people use. Pip 8 has the advantage to have in your requirements.txt hashes of your choice. Now we chose SHA-256 because the CPU time, who cares? It's not much different. So we went to a higher algorithm, but it can be MD5, it can be whatever you want, and you can do it like that. So there's a nice package called pip tools, which has a pip compile binary that will come down, and you can have so you have two files now. You have the normal requirements.txt that you're used to with just the package names and the versions, and then it ingests that and spits out the hashes. Then when you try to build your virtual env, the hashes will be applied to the files. Now, why is there two here for click? One's the wheel and one's the source for the version you want. If there was 2 wheels that work or 3, they'd all be there as well. You'll also see the handy thing that says via, and that means we've pulled in click for pip tools. So you've got a dependency that you haven't hard pinned. I strongly always suggest, and we're trying to get better at this at Instagram, we're pretty much all there now, to hard pin all your dependencies just so one day your app doesn't blow up. The virtual envs at Instagram are built by a periodic job. Whenever someone lands a diff, it goes, oh, I need to build a new VM, or when you're doing tests, and it tars it up. And then the way we push it all to our production servers is over BitTorrent because we have a lot of servers. So like using pip would probably make my mirrors fall over. So I didn't implement any of this. I had a lovely intern this summer to do that for me. So Matt's here. Matt got to do that for me. So he got to write so he wrote a wrapper around pip tools because we have multiple different requirements files, one for the dev containers, one for prod servers. Our prod server doesn't really need PUDB and certain things like that all the time. So we try and limit what goes out to prod. PUDB is probably a bad example, but there's some other ones. So as I said, this is like the file that we're all sort of used to, and people put comments on there and whatnot. And here's some of the packages that Instagram use. You'll see the top one has a weird format. One of the things that sort of slowed Matt down is he had to rebuild a lot of our internal wheels because we weren't using a PEP 440 compliant versioning. So the nice thing now is we're all PEP 440 compliant versioning with all our packages at Instagram. And we turned this guy into this big mess. So humans don't look at this. This is for pip. You stay looking at the requirements.in. But as I said, we're trying to get rid of like where we see via IPython and pinning all our versions. We're a little lazy on the dev file because I don't really care if IPython updates. It's only used by devs trying to like, you know, play with modules and see how they behave and things like that. So the dev one we're not as strict on, but the things that go to prod, we try to hard pin everything. So we're next. So as I said before, we have those mirrors there, and I've got to upload API where the diff is ready to land. I just haven't got there yet. And we want to have our own using extra index URLs. So probably in the near future, Instagram will have their own one. We'll probably have a generic one for all of Facebook, and we may have one for WhatsApp, et cetera, because not everyone needs all the packages that everyone puts up. But today, Instagram jumbles up a big wheel of death, I like to call it. It's about 700 megs, 800 megs or something, full of all the code they take from Facebook's main FB code repository to talk to like our caching layer and all the other databases and all the different things they do. So we're going to split that up into lots of small wheels so that we can update things in a more sane fashion, because when you bring in this big wheel, you get who knows how many bugs from all the different things. So that's where we're sort of going. That was the big picture. And then the big one is getting rid of that manual process that I was talking about, pulling down the sources with Facebook's main source code repository. We call it FB code. We use a build system called Buck that's open source. We'll be integrating Buck to talk to the mirrors and pull the wheels down and install from the wheels rather than the current system that we have today. So that'll be nice, and it'll get a lot of, it'll do two things hopefully. One, it'll stop people hassling us to upgrade modules because it can be very painful in our current system, and hopefully get people doing it more so that we stay more up to date. And then in the distant future, the second part of my intern's project was to make an auto updater for Instagram so that we find random packages that can be updated, and then we throw the diff out. The diff will then go and run all Instagram's unit tests and A/B test it with the current production release, and then we know if it's safe or not to upgrade. So that's going live tomorrow or the next day. So that's going to be fun. So open source, yes. So everything I've done to pull the packages from outside in, I got commit rights to Bandersnatch because I kept putting up PRs, and the guy's like, oh, I don't have time to like do all this. You can just have commit access. So I have commit access. I haven't pushed any of my diffs yet to the release. Well, that's not true. First thing I did is convert it to Python 3 because it hurts for me to use Python 2. That was fun because it's all Unicode. So it was using Unicode strings everywhere. So I don't know who's converted Python 2 to 3 with Unicode everywhere. It's great fun. And then, but it's satisfying when you get there. And then I sort of put in some like things to speed up sorting and some slow file operations because I have a very slow network file system underneath, where if I run it on my normal server with a normal hard drive, things are quick. So that's kind of annoying, but that's just how we go. And I also added like a Bitbucket test pipeline. So now I know I don't break things when I make changes. So if you want to mirror more, speak to me. If you want to come and help contribute to Bandersnatch or help installing it, I've done it now a couple of times, so I know all about it. So that's the thing. I'm a maintainer, as I said. Questions for me about mirroring, pip, all that things, all the good things. I've also done a diff to pip during this ordeal, which is fun because pip doesn't respect the pip.conf if it wants to run its self-update. Who's ever sat there and waited for pip while it's just hanging and you're like, what's it doing? It's generally trying to check if there's a newer version of itself. And today that is hard-coded to hit pipepi.python.org. But hopefully in the next release, my diff will land and it will respect the config file.
Very nice.
Yeah. So that's Python packaging. And I will say another thing is, please try and just do your setup.py right so that the metadata is nice. So many packages, the metadata is just garbage, and the way pip, the things that pip has to do to work out the dependencies and everything is interesting.
All right. Questions for Cooper. He knows a lot. He's an expert. We got an expert in the room.
I wouldn't go that far.
But well, for the record, since you were asking before, at PayPal we didn't do really mirroring in that same way. We encouraged vendoring and explicit checks. At eBay, we ran DevPI, which I'm
Yeah,
curious,
that's the other one. Yeah.
yeah, I'm curious about your thoughts on DevPI.
I haven't played with it at all. I looked at it and it sort of said it caches it's a look through cache. So basically it's a proxy. And I didn't want that. I don't know if you could tell it to save. I haven't looked at it enough. But as soon as I saw it was so DevPI apparently sits in the middle and you point it at that. And then if it doesn't have the package, it'll go and grab it from PyPI and then save it for you. I didn't know if it saved it to disk or it just put it in memory temporarily. Do you know which way it does save the disk? Okay.
It's a disk. And you can do layers, right? So teams can have their own layer. Individuals can have their own layer. It's pretty fancy, and it's by the same guy who wrote PyTest and Tox. Same team, I should say.
Okay, cool.
So it's cool as a result, but I'm interested in this Bandersnatch thing as well.
Yeah. So the reason I chose this is I wanted to be distinctly cut off from the outside world, and basically if PyPI is down and some Instagram engineer wants a new module, we shouldn't have to care. So I just wanted to mirror everything. So that's why I found Bandersnatch. It worked when I tested it. So
absolutely.
I YOLO'd.
I'll talk about Shopkick's thing, but first, Jella has a question. Oh, I answered the question about DevPI. You had a question about DevPI. Okay.
Do you guys run that here at Quora? No. Yeah, I didn't give it too much time. I looked at both just from the specs and read a bit of the code, and I think DevPI was Python 2 as well. So I was like, you're not winning me there.
Yeah, you got me there. You got to take that one up with what's his name? Holger Krekel. There it is.
Where's he work? Or where?
He works in Germany.
Oh, he's German. This guy, the Bandersnatch guy's a German freelancer as well.
I
don't know why these mirroring guys are all freelancers in Germany.
That's a good question.
They don't trust PyPI. That's it.
All right. Questions about yes.
There's one there.
So, how often do you find bad packages? And by bad, I mean not just because they break your code, but they're actually malicious. And what do you do about them?
Yeah. So
how do you prevent that?
We don't do a lot to prevent that. That's up to you as a developer. We say at Facebook, and I don't know what Instagram's official thing is, but I've been at Facebook longer, so I know that. Facebook it's on, and we do this with a lot of things at Facebook. It's on the developer if you pull external code in, to validate it. And if it's all logged, who pulls in what and who commits what. And if it ends up being bad and you did some due diligence, you actually ran unit tests and tested and that, you're sort of forgiven if it wasn't we're a forgiving culture. We don't have a blame culture. And so we would just delete it, clean up, and then do whatever we needed to do after it. We've never had, during the time I've been there, or I haven't seen a security breach for any code brought in. It's still scary all the time. It is one thing that scared me. I worked out the other day, if anyone's ever used UV loop, for async IO, I saw that the Instagram was using the pre-compiled version from PyPI, and we didn't build it ourselves. And I was amazed because all our boxes are CentOS, so linking with old school CentOS libraries, I was surprised it didn't blow up. But I found out how it does it. It bundles libuv in with it, so it's a very modern libuv, so it links pretty well. So files things like that you see all the time. So part of the sort of next plans is we want to sort of stop people using the packages directly off PyPI and creating an easy way to build it in our build environment. And we're going to try and highly discourage not running the unit test so that we don't see anything weird. And also, I generally have a quick look over the unit test, but I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people just want to use it and get their hands dirty and ship new awesome feature.
I know that at Bloomberg, Noah Kantrowitz was saying, not this year's PyPI, but last year's, that they actually do have a static analysis tool that checks for symbols and stuff like that.
Wow.
It goes all the way down to the binary before it will certify the container. So it'll be interesting to see what static analysis you come up with. Ukush, he wants to say something.
All right, here we go. We're doing something.
Yeah, so we're running tests of the third-party packages. And by doing this, I found out that actually we do check if some code does something malicious, because one of the DNS libraries that we use from PyPI was simply just doing stupid lookups of A.com, B.com, C.com, D.com, and 7 of them are on our blacklist of malicious pages that you just cannot access. So like, like we had security on us like right away. Like, what are you doing?
Is that because it hit the
running
proxy server and they saw it for proxy server
Yes,
logs?
exactly.
Yeah, we have a lot. Every now and then you get a weird task at Facebook from some security person going, "Did you really mean to do this?" And it will say something, or "Did you do this with your account?" Or "Is it okay that someone else logged into your account?" Because sometimes I put bugs through and I click yes, it's okay for a dev to log in as me.
So if you want to hack Facebook, make sure you have low test coverage. All right, you have a question.
At the beginning, you said there were like many packages on PyPI. Do you know how many you actually use at Facebook?
Oh yeah, probably only about 250 to 300 of them, probably. Yeah, it's a very low percentage, but I don't know. Like the DevPI sounds an interesting idea. How it caches the only ones you use. I don't know. As I said, like we have a lot of hard drives at Facebook, so it's probably not worth my time caring. Just sync everything, care if we use it later, kind of. It's lazy, I know, but 600 gig to us is, like, it's only about 600, 700 gig. We don't really care. I'm going to give you the lazy response there. But I know for like if you're a startup, like it's DevPI sounds a lot better for you. You just have your like container with 20 gig and mirror what you need.
This might be sort of a newbie question.
Yeah.
I do use
Be closer.
Anaconda.
Oh, yep.
Like, is there any difference between Anaconda and Pep as such?
Yeah, he does have my. I don't know if it was on. So I'll repeat the question. It's all good. So the gentleman here is a user of Anaconda. If you don't know, I don't know a whole lot about Anaconda, but Anaconda has its own packaging system. I think it uses similar things to like pip for the metadata and generation like that. But I don't know how it finds the packages or what the mirrors are laid out like. Carl, do you have any idea if Anaconda uses a similar? Nah.
Yeah, I do. I mean, it has its own dependency specifications and so forth, and it actually resolves those specifications all ahead of time. So you don't necessarily, it has its own metadata basically. You don't need to incrementally sort of recursively download things.
Yeah.
You just like this set and go. But the interesting thing about Anaconda is that it doesn't necessarily just depend on Python packages.
Yeah.
Like so, like you can basically be like Conda installing Nginx or Conda installing, what's that, libblast or whatever.
So they just package up anything that's needed for science, basically.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or in a case of PayPal, we switched to Conda for production installs and stuff. So yeah. It would be interesting to know what that like 300 packages that you guys use are, but if you're trying to reduce your security footprint, you probably don't want to publish.
I'm probably not going to share that. I like my job. I don't think it'd be that bad. You saw some of them before, like.
Sure.
I purposely chose like very benign click and well-known kind of things that most people IPython, like no shit.
Armin's gonna go rogue and he's gonna take down. Anyways,
I've met Armin and I wouldn't put it past him.
That's true. That's true. Okay. All right. Well, I'm sure there's still a lot to discuss. Packaging distribution is a big, big topic. So, but for now, let's give a round of applause for Cooper. And his excellent presentation. Very nice. All right, so we've reached that stage in the meetup whereby we have closing announcements, which Moshe usually does, but Mark is going to do his best to fill in.
So we are going to have a meetup in September. So you're gonna keep your eyes peeled on that page there. Not this one, because this is tonight's meetup. But if you press the back button, that will be the page you want to take a look at, because we're going to put the details up. And
Pyninsula number 7 in September. We're still working out the location and so forth, but that sort of leads me into the next thing. If you have a location you want to host Pyninsula, we like to keep it touring around. Hopefully somewhere a little bit more central in the peninsula, something around Redwood City or whatever. But like we'll come back south again soon. Unless I hear a big protest. Let's see. Talks. Speaking of offering things. So
you want to talk?
Interestingly, locations, despite some emailing and stuff that has to happen and we're happy to do, are not the things that we're shortest on. We need talks, right? You don't let today's high standards, necessarily dissuade you.
Don't tell them this is an outlier. This is normal.
This is normal. This is good. This is good, and good is normal. But at the same time, don't hesitate in submitting it. We're happy to edit and help guide you and that sort of stuff.
And first-time speakers, it's a friendly audience, as you can see. So please, if you want to talk, you can get in touch with us through the meetup page, or you can just come talk to us afterwards.
Yeah.
And yeah, we would love to have anybody who wants to talk. Tell your friends, your family.
Mm-hmm.
Come talk at Pyninsula.
And so, yes, one other thing, these badges of yours, you know, be green, be earth friendly. There's a bin, you can toss them in there. I think you can keep the printed part as a souvenir if you want, if you're sentimental, if you have a scrapbook, if you want to take a picture and upload it to your Instagram, whatever. Anyway, yeah. But otherwise, right, we have the space for I believe another hour or so. There's drinks, you know, there's good company. Let's all have a good time, and yeah, thank you all for coming. Let's give it another round of applause for our hosts as well, Quora. Thank you, Quora. All right, and these videos will be online as soon as Quora gets me the MP4 and I slice it up using my command line. All right, thanks again.